Back in the day, we all had a lot of skills that we learned at our mother's elbow or at our grandmother's elbow in the kitchen. And one of those things that we all learned how to do was how to cut up a chicken. For a long time, a lot of us has relied on supermarkets to have meat cut into the pieces that we need. But as we go through the COVID process of adjusting to things, one of the things we're probably going to see is that some of the things we've relied on having done at the store for us are things we will have to do ourselves now. So today I've got Jake Nelson, who's the meat processing specialist with the Robert M. Kerr Food and Agriculture Processing Center, and he's going to help you learn how to cut up a chicken because you may have trouble finding the component parts that you've relied on in the past at the store.
We're going to cut up a chicken today, and I want to start off by reviewing what might be some common knives in most household kitchens. I have out here in front of me 3 knives, and I've set aside 2 of them that are probably more common than perhaps the other 3. This one right here, most of you know, is a chef's knife. It's usually very rigid, and it's used for many purposes in the kitchen, and generally, depending upon the blade, is not often sharpened or maintained. This particular chef's knife has some small serrations in it. This could be used for cutting up the chicken, and probably, if nothing else is available, might be the best knife. This is what we might refer to as a vegetable knife. It's much longer, a little more flexible in the construction. Again, it has some mild scallops on it and some very fine serrations cut into that. I probably would reserve this knife for vegetables and other uses and not for cutting up a chicken. I'm going to set these to the side. I have then 3 other typical commercial or professional meat cutting knives. You notice that 2 of them have curved blades, 1 has a straight blade. The straight bladed knife is a little stiffer. It has a blade about 6 inches in length. It would be sufficient for cutting up a chicken. And then we have my 2 favorites. These are my standard go-tos. We have a 6-inch curved boning knife and an 8-inch curved, what we call a breaking knife. They're easily sharpened repeatedly. Get it sharp, it gets dull. Sharpen it again, it gets dull. This particular one has a blunt tip. This one has a sharp tip. There's lots of different knife configurations. I'm going to use these 2 for cutting up a chicken today in the kitchen. When you buy a whole chicken at your retailer, it's very common to find them in a plastic bag like this, and it's even just as common that water or purge, or we call it myoglobin, it's liquid protein, it's not blood, and you can see it pooling there in that. That represents a food safety risk for cross-contamination in your kitchen. So it's smart to use an old cake pan or some kind of device to contain this when you open this package so that you're not slinging this purge all over the kitchen. Kitchen and knife safety. It's always important to know where your knife is and to know where your other hand is. So I'm going to hold this bag cut away from my hand as much as possible. A dull knife is a dangerous knife. You notice this sharp knife is very easily cutting through this plastic. So I can just lay this knife wherever I want it to go and it will gently go there. If I had a dull knife, I'd have to be really forcefully push, and that creates a dangerous scenario. Keep this chicken contained in the pan. Then I'm going to transfer it over to this white plastic cutting board. And that's for the purpose of preserving the integrity of my knife. If you happen to have a granite countertop or a stainless steel countertop, that's very hard on the cutting edge of knives. And so if you can use a cutting board, that's advisable because it's made of plastic. It will give a little bit when you cut on the surface and preserve the surface of your knife. So here's the whole chicken out of the bag. You can see that there's some purge already coming out. I think the generally accepted recommendations from food safety officials out there are to not wash these chickens in a sink. You can cause splatter and cross-contamination broadly. It's better to keep it as dry as possible so that you can see where this purge is. So we've got this whole chicken here, and we don't want to eat it whole. We want to cut it up into the typical parts and pieces that we're accustomed to seeing oftentimes in the retail setting. So I trimmed a little bit of excess fat back there by the vent. The first thing that I prefer to do is to start with these leg quarters. And a leg quarter is the drumstick coupled with the thigh, which sits right down in here. You'll notice there's kind of a little balloony appearance to the skin here. We're just going to open that up just like so. And you can do as much fabrication with your hands without a knife as you can with a knife. You can just kind of pull that apart. You'll see a natural seam here, and I'm going to cut down, stay away from that wing, and right up where this thigh bone comes up and joins to the vertebral column near the breast, there's a joint down in there. And if you kind of peel that away, you can kind of find where that bone goes into that joint and cut right through it. And then apply a little bit of pressure and it'll just pop right open there for you. And there I've separated that leg quarter from the rest of the chicken, comprised of the thigh and the drumstick. If I want to further separate that, you'll kind of see another kind of a natural seam where the two join. You can see the fat right there. And we're just going to cut right down through that, and there's a cartilaginous joint. Just cut all the way through that. It's soft enough, these chickens are young enough that a good knife will just cut right through that. And there's the first cut, the drumstick. We'll set that over here. And here is then a bone-in, skin-on thigh. As with any cut, if you want to make it boneless and skinless, you take the bone and the skin out. And it's just that simple. These skins peel off nicely. Trim a little excess fat there. And then the bone portion, you can just carefully take your knife down in there against the bone, cut away from your hand, remove that bone portion, use that cutting table to your advantage, and there you've got some thigh meat. After that, we're going to take these wings off. And the wings are a very popular item, and again, they come and attach at a joint down here where the wing comes up and joins the rest of the body. And you just gently take your knife in there, kind of expose that, and cut right down through it. And then again, you can find the joints. Anywhere you see a bend in the structure of that appendage, there's going to be a joint. So I can just come right here into the point of these two and cut right through. And that cartilage separates nicely. We can go ahead and cut this tip off if we'd like. There's just a lot of bone down in here. Again, this chicken is soft and pliable, and if you don't hit that joint properly, you run the risk of slipping and cutting yourself. So again, as I talk to you with a Band-Aid on my finger, always be mindful of how you're handling your knife and how you're handling the product. What's left then are the two breast halves and the neck, and then the back. And this is probably one of the most difficult tasks to do properly, and I'm going to go to my bigger knife. It's a little longer, gives me a little more leverage to separate this breast portion from the back. I like to stand this up and put the front of the chicken down, and I'm just going to take my knife straight down where it's going to rub against the breastbone, leaving the majority of the ribs that you can see down in there with the back. So I'm just going to come in and cut straight down. There's a cartilaginous joint there that you can kind of find and hear and feel. Cut right through that. And then there is the whole bone-in breast portion and the back that remains. If you want to finish the breast off, you could leave it whole like this. We're going to go all the way down and make at least one boneless, skinless chicken breast. It comes off rather easily. Set that skin aside. Turn it over. And essentially, we're just going to have to cut right through this breastbone. And that's why I like a larger, sturdier knife. And I'm just going to lay that in there and get it started. And then use both hands without cutting myself and separate that breastbone. Once you have all of those parts cut and separated, what you have remaining then are the bones if you deboned it. You have the back and some skin. There's a number of things you can do with this. My mother growing up would put that in a pot of water and cook that down, get the meat off, make a stock, make a broth. There's a number of recipes for that, and then you've got the cuts to go with it.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.